People in Brazil are angry and demanding change. They've held some of the largest demonstrations in 20 years to protest against the rising cost of living and the expense of the World Cup. About 200,000 people marched through the streets of major cities.
Back on the streets to show their anger, protesters attempt to storm the mayor's office and City Hall in São Paulo. Riot police fight back from the doorways as the crowds surge forward. This popular discontent is directed against what many think is a corrupt and inept government. From the air, it looked as though people were ransacking stores and businesses. The demonstration's organisers said this was only a small group engaged in violence and that more than 50,000 people protested peacefully. Brazil has not seen protests like this for 20 years. But the combination of the financial commitment and the political determination to stage two globally important demonstrations will probably not end soon.
President Dilma Rousseff has declared her government is listening.
Essas vozes das ruas precisam ser ouvidas.
The voices from the streets need to be heard.
E ficou visível isso. Os mecanismos tradicionais.
They transcend mechanisms of institutions, of political parties, of class and the media.
E da própria mídia.
The unrest comes at a delicate time for Rousseff, whose administration is struggling to get the economy back on track after sluggish growth and is facing the cost of staging the next World Cup.
Demonstrators in Rio de Janeiro attacked the state legislature building, throwing firebombs and confronting police. At least 20 officers and 10 protesters were reportedly injured. Many in the crowds complained about rampant corruption, crime, low wages, and a lack of social services.
They don't have to conform to everything that's going on here. They can speak and their voice can be heard, and I think that's why people are really getting so excited about all this.
Everybody's fed up with how the authorities and how they're dealing with our interests, and most of the population, not only interest of businessmen and contractors or stuff like that.
It's the beginning for a larger movement of changing the country.
Some local authorities say they're already looking at how they can address people's demands, but protesters are taking nothing for granted. These latest protests in Sao Paulo show that tens of thousands of Brazilians are willing to keep coming out onto the streets to push for the change they feel is badly needed.
I think the demonstrations up to now, they have been very diverse. They started as a protest against hikes in transportation fares, and also due to the quality of the transportation wasn't seen as good. But they've taken on a huge array of items and topics without a clear focus. And they're directed not only against the state government or the city government, which is responsible for the fares themselves of public transport, but they've taken up a number of issues related to topics that are in discussion in Congress, related to the role of the media in Brazil, critical of the role of the media in Brazil. So it's a very broad array of questions and themes that are brought together by a thread of dissatisfaction with a number of issues. So we have to listen to these demonstrations, to their messages, when they are organized peacefully. That's part of our democracy. And we have to try to incorporate those grievances into public policies to deliver to these people. So we understand this as a natural democratic process.
This should be a time of mounting excitement ahead of the World Cup. Instead, it's tension that grows. Undeterred by police force, unconvinced by government reassurances, a crowd frustrated by leaders spending money on stadiums rather than schools and hospitals.